you guys, it's episode 94 of Inner Demons, and like always, I'm gonna get straight to it, and I do mean in the literal sense. You guys don't like me rambling on before I get into my videos, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so let me jump straight into it. Episode 93. So, after doing episode 92, I felt like there were some things that I needed to touch on with regards to the Palmas case. That whole trial and just, that transition that I went through, in the process. There were some things that I wanted to touch up on, so that's what I did in episode 93. So one of the things I want to talk about now is my book. When I started writing it, my purpose for writing it, what motivated me to write it, and just everything dealing with my book, how long it took me and all that good stuff. So at this point, I'm still in Little Max. I'm still housed in Little Max, and they haven't taken me off a maximum security tier yet. I've been bouncing around from observation cells to max tiers, but at this point, they still haven't let me off, a max tier. So, I did a lot of soul searching in Little Max. This was a time where I told you guys in the last video, I had to really do a lot of soul searching, and I had to, come to terms with a lot of things that were going on with me at that time. Choices that I was going to have to make, whether or not I was going to be able to move forward in life with any, measure of normalcy. There was just a lot of things that were going on with me at that time. And, I was still struggling with what people, how people perceived me, how I was going to be looked at. I was too caught up in all that at that time. My reputation, it mattered to me, and it still does. But at that time, I think I was so caught up in it. I was consumed with, what are people going to think about me? I was always used to, having a reputation that I was proud of. I was, I had never been in trouble with the fellas. From the time I got involved with gangs, this was all that, this was the only life that I knew. And I pretty much invested myself in every aspect of that part of life. And, I took great emphasis on how people looked at me, my reputation, the things that I did out there in the streets. A lot of the things that I was doing out there that gang members do, I took a lot of pride in the way that people looked at me. And that was something that I was struggling with in Little Max. Here I am on the verge of making some life-changing decisions, and this was definitely going to have an impact on the way people perceive me. Was I going to be able to live with this? Was I going to be able to live life with some, some measure of normalcy, or was this going to consume me out there on the streets if I ever made it home? This was something that I continuously asked myself. And, a lot of it was that I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like a hypocrite. Here I was all these years, from the time I was 18 up until, my 40s. I had spent most of that time in prison. And, I can think of all kind of yards that I've been on, exercise yards, ad segs, holes, shoe program yards, where I was out there with a lot of these youngsters, that I'd indoctrinated. A lot of them I schooled, I gamed them up. I instilled a lot of our beliefs, or a lot of the NF's beliefs. There obviously isn't no we, because I'm not a part of that lifestyle no more. Sometimes I still, get into the habit of saying we or us, because, I'm used to that. But if I do that, it's just me telling you guys these stories. That's all it is. So, here I am in Little Max, and like I said, I'm consumed with this. These thoughts were there were things that were bothering me. I don't know what everybody else was going through in their cells, but this is one of the reasons why this series is named Inner Demons, because that's exactly what I was struggling with, my inner demons. These were things that, only I could deal with these things. I was in that cell by myself, and these are things that I had to work out within myself, just like everybody else. Everybody has their inner demons. Everybody has, things that they have to overcome or get through in life. And for me, this was the first time that I really had to deal with something like this, especially something that had a direct impact on my reputation. So, the idea of writing a book, it started playing in my mind. I started thinking about, what, maybe I should write a book. You know, it was important for me to somehow communicate to all these youngsters that I had got to know over the years, all these youngsters that I gamed up, these guys that I used to reprimand and try to instill these beliefs and these principles and these ethics and just the NF and the NR's way of thinking, instilling these qualities within these guys. I remember countless individuals that I had these conversations with, and now here I was completely, doing a 180, and I was about to become all the things that I had advocated against in my past. And that bothered me. It bothered me. I don't know, maybe some people don't have a conscience. Maybe they can, walk, chew bubblegum at the same time, trip and act like it was on purpose. You know what I mean? I can't do that. I've never been able to do that because these were things that I really believed in. So, I thought about writing a book. The prospect of writing a book, it was like, you know what? I thought about it and was like, you know what? That's a good idea. It was never about monetary gain. It was never about, trying to make any kind of financial gain off of this lifestyle. It wasn't about that for me. What this was about was at least finding some kind of channel, some kind of way to communicate to all these guys that had a lot of love and respect for the Norteño people, these individuals that I functioned with, these guys that I was willing to die for. I put myself in a lot of situations where, my life, I could have lost my life because, I was either fighting for the cause or, I was fighting for the advancement of the street affairs. There was a lot of different situations that I put myself in for the organization, not on my own accord, but for the organization. So that obviously has got to tell you that it meant something to me. At one point in my life, this is all that I had to fall back on. When everything else seemed to fail in my life, even though I seen a lot of treachery and a lot of, abuse and, a lot of things that were conflicting as far as the way that I've been taught, I still embrace the cause. I still embrace the Norteño, people as, that was the most important thing to me. And I 100% wholeheartedly believed in this organization. I walked it, talked it, breathed it. I mean, this was everything to me. So, one day I sat down and I just, in my mind, I formulated a way that I was going to write a book. You know what? If I write this book, this is how I'm going to write it. And it took me, several weeks of just thinking about it, just kicking it around in my head. You know what? I'm going to do it like this, where I go full circle and, I kind of tell the story and put people in the moment. And that's the way I want to do it. And I don't want to make it about, my personal achievements, the things that I did as far as stabbings and, the victimization of just victimizing people and a lot of the accolades, the things that I did personally to get myself up that ladder. It wasn't about that. What I wanted this to be about was more, I wanted it to be geared more towards putting people in the moment of everything that I went through as far as the political struggles that I had to go through, and putting people in that moment so that they could ask themselves, what would you do? I mean, really, you can lie, you can manipulate it, you can, say this and say that and know that you're not being real, or you can be real with yourself. You don't got to tell nobody. You know what I mean? Just keep it real within yourself. It's just you and my book. Read my book and ask yourself while you're reading it, what would you have done in this situation? There's obviously there's two ways of approaching this. And this was something that I always thought about in every turn of this struggle that I went through. I can either be smart about the choices that I make, no matter how undesirable they are, because this is the game of life I'm playing. I've said this. How many times have I said this to you guys? You know, obviously, unless, you know, you believe in reincarnation or you believe in, you know, we'll come back as, you know, some kind of other, an animal, or, you know, we'll come back to be somebody else in life. Unless you believe that, we have one chance on this God-given earth to live out our days, our existence, and then we're gone. That's guaranteed. Everybody that is born is gonna, that is alive and breathing is gonna pass on at some point in time. What you do with your life, how you live it, what you make of it, who you become, that's entirely up to you. You can go on to live a you know, a prosperous life. You can go on to live a productive life where, you know, you're happy and content and, you know, you make something of it, or you can completely drop the ball, waste it, throw it all away, and feel sorry for yourself for the rest of your life in a concrete box somewhere. It's simple. At least, you know, these are the choices that you have to make in this game right here. Those of you youngsters that are thinking about, you know, becoming gang members, those of you youngsters that are glorifying this lifestyle, the women, the money, you know, the nice cars, all that stuff, it's, you know, it's cool. It's cool to have all that stuff. It's cool to have a nice looking, you know, a nice looking old lady. It's cool to have, you know, a pocket full of bread to do whatever you want, to go places, you know, whenever you want, to have money on hand to be able to do the things that you want to do in life. It's nice to have a nice car, to have a nice house. But if, you know, you get these things through, you know, living that lifestyle, the kind of lifestyle that I lived, being a gang member, selling drugs, robbing people, at some point you're going to run out of luck unless you're just good at navigating the streets. But at some point, again, unless you're hella lucky, you're gonna end up getting caught up. And when you're put in these situations, sooner or later you're gonna get caught up and your life is gonna be hanging in the balance. You know, before in the 80s, when I used to get caught up, it was fun. And especially in San Francisco. San Francisco being one of the most liberal cities in California. You know, you catch a robbery, strong arm robbery, dead bang, in the act, get the case dumped. They'll kick you to, you know, the CDC so that you can do a violation and you'll be back out same time next year. You could do that in San Francisco over and over and over. Pick up a 16, 2, and 3 constantly, just back to back. There was no 5, 10, 15 years. All that shit came later. This wasn't my first life case that I caught. This wasn't the first time that my life was in the balance, was hanging in the balance. I had caught other life cases. I fought those cases. I had co-defendants. And shit didn't get all convoluted and messy like it did in this case here. The only reason why it did is because that phone call got exposed and people ran with it, and then it turned into a campaign, or, you know, it turned into, you know, people pushed an agenda. That's what it was. Otherwise, B would have been all right. B would have still continued to do what B had been doing since I was a kid, since I was a youngster. I would have continued functioning. I would have continued, you know, to waste my life in prison, to waste my life being, you know, a gang member, running for somebody else, generating money for, you know, this organization. That's that's just the reality that's just the reality of it. Nobody can take that away. Nobody can refute that. Nobody can say anything different about it. Nobody has walked in my shoes. Nobody but me knows the truth. And, I can look anybody in the eyes and tell them that I was willing to take that life case for this organization, for, well, not even so much for this organization. I want to say it was more for, my pride. Again, it was about my reputation. I didn't want to fall in bad standings. I didn't want people to look at me, like I had done something foul. I was never used to being in a situation like that. Everything that happened in Santa Clara County, that shit was new to me. I was always used to being looked at as, that's a solid motherfucker right there. B boxer from San Francisco, that dude is a true believer. That's how people used to speak about me. So, people can say what they want. It really doesn't matter to me. I know, and that's all that matters. I know, and people that were close to me, they know. But that was the whole purpose for me wanting to write a book, was to put my thoughts down on paper, and hopefully someday I would be able to publish the book, and guys that knew me would read it and would be like, I really honestly didn't expect it to change anybody's real perception of me, because once you cross that line, or once you do the deed, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the situation was. It doesn't matter what the circumstances were. It doesn't matter, how justified people might look at it. None of that matters. The bottom line is you did what you did. But I at least wanted people to understand, like, okay, you know what? Damn, that's a fucked up situation, and I don't know what I would have done, but at least, this individual didn't just check in because, he got weak, and, he couldn't live up to that life. He couldn't live up to those expectations, because anybody that, could ever try saying that about me, that would be coming from somebody that don't know me. That would be, that would come from somebody that, had never interacted with me, that didn't know me on a personal level. I mean, it is what it is. If, the situation would have been different, I would have told you. I'd be telling you guys. I'd tell you guys, the real story. No matter what it was, it's not gonna affect me either way. A lot of you, I'm never gonna meet you guys. I'll never cross paths with you. So why do I really care at the end of the day what people think about me? That's the way I look at it now. I've obviously, have allowed myself to get out of that way of thinking, because in the county jail, I'm telling you, I was consumed with it. I was completely consumed with the way people were going to look at me. So, after formulating a plan in my mind, how I was going to write it, from corner to corner, going over it in my mind, I finally came up with, an idea of how I was going to put it down. And one day I sat down after a good workout. I sat there and I got into the foreword. That was the opening of the book. I got into the foreword, and my idea of the foreword is like to tell you a little bit about what the book is about, to give you a general idea about, the story that you're about to read. So I went into it, I went into the organization, what the organization meant to me, some of the politics, my involvement, how long I was involved for, being that I was involved from the time I was a kid up until, my 40s. And, I laid into it. I put it down and I tucked that shit away. I put it in my legal papers. and I never told nobody about it. So one day in Little Max, I'm having a conversation with Turtle, and we're talking about the case, and we're talking about just different people that were involved. So I believe the topic came up. Me and Turtle were talking about how life was going to be for him. He was getting ready to get out at that time. He knew he was going to go home. He wasn't looking at a life case. Me, I wasn't really sure about going home. I didn't think that they were going to they'd ever let me go at that point. I thought that there was still a chance that I could still, pick up a life case. But Turtle, he had one foot out the door. He had already, been through the process. So that came up, that conversation came up, and we were kicking it around. And, I'd asked him, how is it going to be for you, bro? Now that you're going to get back out there, you don't got the fellas to turn to no more. How are you gonna move out there now? It's gonna be different for you, bro. You're not gonna have a lot of the resources, and you're not gonna be able to, rely on some of the people that you did before. It changes the dynamics, big time. It's gonna be a lot different. So we started talking about it. And at one point, I told him, bro, after hearing him talk about some of his concerns, I told him, I think about it all the time, bro. I think about how I'm going to be, perceived by people that I grew up with, how family members are going to perceive me. Family members, they're always going to love you no matter what. Blood is thicker than water. They're going to love you. They're going to embrace you no matter what you do in life. That's just the way it is. However, some of us have family that are active and that are still in the mix. And even though they're still going to embrace you because, that's your primo or your tío or somebody that's related, they'll embrace you and they'll love you. But at the same time, they're going to have they're going to look at you some type of way. That's just the way it is. I even thought about how my own family were going to look at me. From the time I was a kid, they instilled a lot of my beliefs in me as just a small kid. I remember, everything from, fighting to, not telling, those kind of principles to just things that you don't do and things that were okay and things that were acceptable, things that were unacceptable. And I learned these things and I carried them with me for years. So I even thought about how are some of my family, how are they really going to look at me? Like even my mom and stepfather, like, what do they talk about when it's just them two? Are they having conversations thinking about like, damn, we told him about getting involved in gangs from the time he was a kid, but that's something that, he went off to prison and he did that himself. And then now look at him. He's in a world of trouble. He's in a mess. And then look at what he's doing, or look at what he's forced to do. They were street people. They grew up on the streets. They sold dope on the streets, and they ran around on the streets. So that wasn't acceptable to a lot of people that they knew. So, all these things were coming through my mind. All these things were playing through my mind when I was, sitting up there in Little Max thinking about it. So, me and Turtle were having this conversation, and I told him, hey, bro, I'm going to send you something. I want you to read it, bro. Check it out, read it. Tell me what you think. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Give me your honest opinion. I'm depending on you to tell me the truth because I need you to give me some constructive criticism if that's what I need, bro. But I need you to be straight up about it. He was like, yeah. He was like, go ahead, shoot it, bro. So I went in my legal papers and I found it. I found the forward that I started writing, and it was about a good 12 pages of small print too. It wasn't mini print, but it was small writing. So I sent it to him, and he's like, God, he's like, damn, bro. He was like, this is a fucking book. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Check that out. and then get back at me, bro, and tell me what you think. So, about 40 minutes later, he's like, "Hey, B." And I'm like, "Yeah, what's up, bro?" And he's like, "Hey, homie." He's like, "Look, bro, I'm not gonna bullshit with you. I'm not gonna blow no smoke. You need to finish this. This shit right here it's interesting, bro." It's like I'm already looking for the next chapter. Seriously, man. This right here, it grabs you from the start, and it's interesting, and I can relate to it. The way that you articulated it, it's just I can relate to it, bro. It's easy to understand. And that was a good thing, because me myself, I really don't consider myself to be an articulate speaker. I'm not somebody that speaks like a professor. I don't use a lot of fancy words. I'm just an average, person when it comes to, the way that I articulate myself. That's just how I see myself. I'm not a professor, my vocabulary is not polished, like Boxer Enriquez. I always refer to him because his way of speaking it's on another level, but it's almost too polished, too professor like. That's not me. But the one thing that you will get from me is it's authentic, it's straight, it's raw, and it's gritty, and I speak from the heart. And I use a lot of street lingo, and a lot of things that people can understand, a lot of phraseology that people can understand. So that was a good thing. And honestly, Turtle motivated me to continue to write that book. I want to say in Little Max, after that, I probably pumped out like around 5 more chapters. And it took a long time just to write those 5 chapters. That book took 5 years to write. The entire time that I was in the county jail from 2007 or 2008 until 2000, like 12, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4 years, almost 5 years, I stayed on that book. When later on, when they'd eventually allow me to come off, the max tier, and they would send me over to the new jail after I had come to terms with, with my status, once I wasn't fighting it no more, and, I'm not going to say embraced it, but I was like, it is what it is. When I went to the new jail and they put me, first on the 5th floor, then at one time I was on the 6th floor, and I'll get to all that. I'll get to the details of all that later when I get there. But, when everybody else will be out playing pinochle or watching movies or, playing grab ass out in the day room, I'd be in my cell at my desk with my thesaurus and my dictionary, and I'd be banging out chapters. Literally, I was trying to get that book done. And even though I was trying to get it done, it took me 5 years. That's a long time to write a book, but that's how invested I was in it. And again, the whole purpose was, the way I was looking at it was, this is my opportunity to express myself to a lot of the homies that are probably not going to understand when they hear, what happened in the Santa Clara County Jail. Damn, B and her B got into a wreck over there, and B ended up in bad standings, and now B's no good, and all those things that, well, people were hearing about them before it even happened. That's another thing that pissed me off about that whole situation. People were hearing that I was no good. My kids were hearing that I was a snitch back in 2007, and it wasn't even true. People were dragging my name through the mud, and it none of it was true. Yet you got other cats that are coming out in police reports in black and white, and nothing's being said about these individuals because they're related to somebody or because they're tied into somebody. I'm not going to say it was all because I was from San Francisco. I wasn't from San Jose, and a lot of dudes over there were hating on me. But you know what? At the end of the day, a lot of it was that. A lot of it was the fact that you just had some haters over there. Once that smoke started, that little bit of smoke started to come up, and people started sniffing around and thinking that that I was up to no good. Then it blew up. It blew up, and people started spinning the narrative and putting the 2 on the 10. And before you know it, I was doing all kind of crazy shit, and shit was happening, and I was hearing about it on the streets, and it was crazy. It was discouraging as well. But that's what was happening. But anyways, so that's when I decided to write the book. And that's the whole purpose for it, was because I felt like a hypocrite. And I'll get into, more about it later when I actually finished it and how I went about publishing it, because there's people that are curious about that. There's other people that get at me, because they have, they're aspiring to be a book writer or an author of, just a book about their lives as well. So, I intend on getting into that part of it. And for those of you that are asking in the comments, is Inner Demons going to end where the book ends, or is it going to go above and beyond the book? The things that happened on the streets after. It will. Inner Demons will go beyond the county jail, beyond Santa Clara County Jail, all the way up until, at some point where I feel comfortable that I'm going to stop it right there. Because obviously I'm not trying to put too much of my personal business out there, but, I'm open to, give you guys as much of it as I can. Now, anyways, at around this time when all this was going on in the county jail, when, the prospect of or the book idea came up, and I'm still in Little Max, I started, classification had came up to the tier, and they started talking about the possibility of letting me off the max tiers. They started floating the idea of possibly letting me go to the new jail, to a program that they had called Breaking Barriers. And basically what it was is, it was for guys that were no longer part of that lifestyle, guys that wanted to, to turn their life in another direction, that had walked away from, just that lifestyle, and were trying to break barriers, like the title says. So, I wasn't really too thrilled about the idea of being around other people. My co-defendants, I was okay with that. I knew them, I rock with them on the street, and there was a level of comfort, being around them, because we knew each other, and we got caught up with each other, and we were in this mess with each other. But just the idea of being around other individuals, the dropout politics, the new gangs and all that, I don't hold that against anybody that decides to sign up for that shit. But me, myself, it's nothing that I believe in. It made no sense to me, and I didn't want that around me. Later on, I would end up being around individuals that were into that, but they knew to keep that to themselves, and that, that's nothing that I promoted. It was nothing that I believed in, and it wasn't nothing that I really wanted to talk about, because you really didn't want to hear my opinion about it. I respected it as far as what they did. That's their business. But I just didn't want to, I wasn't in a hurry to get off into all that. I had been an NR member for 5 years. I had been an NF member for almost 10 years. And I got into that movement, this organization, because I believed in the cause, and the cause represented something that, I was a part of since I was a kid. being a Norteño, running around out there on the streets and gang banging when it used to be red on red. And, so there wasn't nothing that I could identify with that was pulling at me as far as why would I want to join another movement or a group, because now I was fighting a new fighting against the actives. No, we're not doing that. Hey, I ended up, getting myself into a bad situation, or however people want to look at it. There was other people that campaigned against me, no matter what it was. I ended up in the situation that I ended up in, but I wasn't looking for a second chance. I wasn't about to, sign up with somebody else and start fighting against the actives. And I didn't hate the homies, and I still don't. I don't hate the homeboys. I don't hate, there's a lot of Norteños. I still have a lot of love and respect for them. I have a lot of homies from my neighborhood that still love me and respect me. I still talk to them. They tell me, B, I don't give a fuck about all that. I understand what they did was foul, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have hate against the homies like that. A lot of dropouts, they do. A lot of guys that, whatever reason they fell wayside, or whatever reason, they have for being on that side, they turn their aggressions on the active dudes. I used to sit back in C-section all the time, up there while I was active, and, during the times when, I was overseeing C-section, I never said nothing to none of the dropouts down there. I knew every last one of them. Obviously, I'd been around for a while, so I knew all these guys. And they all used to respect me. I'd walk by and they'd all say, what's up? What's up, B? And I would acknowledge them. A lot of the times I would just acknowledge them because I didn't want to hear them talk shit. But what I would trip on is I'd sit up there in my cell and I'd listen to these guys cell soldier on the tier and take their aggressions out on the homies that were still programming. They were mad at them, finding any reason to, verbally disrespect them, to talk shit about them all day. That's how they spent their time dealing with their inner demons. They spent their time, hating on the homies. It's almost like quiet time, or, it's almost like that quiet time haunted them, because they had to deal with those, their thoughts. They had to accept the fact that they were down there on that tier and they weren't active. They weren't part of the collective that was still up there doing their thing. I couldn't understand that. I always used to tell myself, man, I don't understand why these dudes are hating on the homies that are still striving, the ones that are still pushing it, that are still doing their thing. It's not their fault that you fell out. It's not their fault that even if you got turned on and you got done foul and you were completely just done wrong, it's still not their fault. There's certain people that are involved in different situations, bad leadership, bad, decision making, that ends up, being the reason why a lot of these dudes end up on those tiers. But it's just not the homie's fault. Yeah, so what? This dude's fat. Yeah, so what? This guy, he has some fucked up artwork. Or so what? This guy can't do burpees. But these guys would just be down there, man. And sometimes, the shit that they'd be saying it was so fucked up. You had to laugh about it, like, damn, that fool's getting roasted. You know what I mean? But anyways, I know I'm kind of jumping all over and getting off track, but so around this time when the idea, the prospect of writing the book came up, and classification started floating the idea of possibly letting me off a max tier and sending, not just me, but a few of us that were back there in Little Max to the new jail. Lencho's case started heating up. This was around the time when, Lencho's his worst nightmare started to become true. And that was, the worst thing that could have happened to Lencho in his situation was basically his second in command to flip on him and his wife to flip on him. And both of those things happened at around that same time. So, I've talked a little bit about Lencho's wife in the past and how she was instrumental in bringing everybody that was either associated with his regiment or who were part of his regiment, how she was instrumental in bringing them down. She worked hand in hand with, the agency and the officers that basically took us all down. Livingston, DJ Lewis, APD, and Campbell PD. And then you had a special agency, Santa Clara County Specialized Enforcement Team. Well, I've told you guys several times that everybody that came after my regiment, me being the first one to get arrested at around that time, in 2004, there was really nothing going on in the Santa Clara County Jail. There was no indictments. There was no big cases. They had a couple murder cases, some Norteños that had killed some other Norteños in a Jack in the Box out there or something. There was that case going on and some other shit. I believe that female, I'm sure you guys from San Jose remember this. There was a female that had a finger and she put it in her soup or something at one of those restaurants out there. That was going on, but there was no big cases going on at that time. No big NF indictments or nothing like that. 2004, I got wiped out. They hit my regiment. They got basically everybody that worked with me or who assisted me, all my, regiment members, all my safe houses, and everybody that was associated with the regiment. They basically wiped us all out. From that point on, it just turned into it just snowballed. It went from my regiment to, Lencho's regiment, to Sammy Ramirez's regiment, to Charlie Campa's, to Kramer, Dancing Bear, and it kept on going and going. These cops could have made a lifetime career out of just continuing to keep this case going, indicting more people, because these guys were making the same mistakes that I made. I should have been, everybody should have took notice of what happened with us, and they should have learned from it, capitalized off it. And a lot of them probably would have, they probably would have saved themselves a lot of grief. But they made the same mistakes. They got on the phone. They tried to recoup a lot of the money that was out there, floating around on the streets. A lot of them tried to continue to coordinate the streets from in the jail. Meanwhile, you got these, passionate gang intel officers that are down there in the Santa Clara County Jail, sitting back, recording everything, and then feeding it to these outside agencies. I mean, these guys were doing some extra shit. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Out of all the county jails that I've been to, I've never been to a county jail that was like Santa Clara County when it comes to them listening to the phone calls. Them motherfuckers are on some other shit over there. They listen to everything. That is like their main source of information. It's just, these guys are sloppy. They put all their business on the phones. When you have a big, a case that comes up like Lencho, when all these guys start coming in, you got this agency that brings all these guys in and they're all kind of tied in with each other. These gang intel officers down there, they obviously know who's who came in together. So, they target these guys. They, let's listen to his phone calls, this guy's phone calls, all these different guys. Anytime they ever dial a number, they come out, they listen to the phone calls, and they're able to put everything together like a big puzzle. They identify where their weaknesses are, who their contacts are, who was tied into who. It all starts to come together. And it's easy for them. They just sit back and pick these guys off. And that's what they were doing. And that's what they were doing when I was even in, Second East with Looney and Manos. And I was telling these guys, man, stop talking on the phone, bro. They're listening to you guys. How come you guys are not, taking heed to what happened with us? Bro, I caught cases on the phone. My shit got twice as bad because of that phone right there. That's why I didn't want that phone in front of myself. When I was asked, if I wanted to take part in, Jerry had some burnout numbers, I was like, nah, I'm good, bro. I'm cool on that phone. I learned my lesson. But these guys continued to make the same mistakes. And that's why a lot of them got caught up. And that's why these officers that spearheaded these cases, that's why they had so much information. That's why, they knew so much, is because we fed it to them. We fed them everything. But, Lencho is Lencho. He's not the smartest dude, obviously. He's going to do things his way because he thinks he's the smartest one in the room. He thinks that he's got everything all figured out. So even though, I was down there even warning his dumb ass, bro, stop fucking talking on the phone. Stop having these dudes talk on the phone. We'd be down there drinking. And, even I had a little head change at times. I'd be down there drinking with them and I tell him, bro, you guys need to stop fucking talking on the phone, and I was righteously trying to look out for them. I was righteously trying to look out for them, trying to tell them, man, these cops are all over these phones. They're listening to everything that, you guys are talking about. And, his comeback was, bro, we got our codes figured out, and we got a certain way of talking. And okay, all right, bro, hey, suit yourself, man, but don't say I didn't tell you. And then when the whole tier gets indicted, everybody wonders why. So when his case started heating up, and the phone calls started coming out, there were a couple of phone calls that he made to his sister Stephanie that were hilarious. I mean, straight comical, man. If you guys were to hear him, I mean, you had to feel bad for the dude, but at the same time, I'm telling you, they were funny as hell. Because here Lencho is, here's this big dummy thinking that he's smart. He's got his girl on lock. She's not going nowhere. She's, fully invested in him, and she's out there running for him, taking care of all of his business. And the funny thing about it is that, I don't know if it was her intuition, but his sister, Stephanie, Lencho's sister, Stephanie, she never cared for Lencho's wife. She hated Debbie with a passion. Every phone call that I heard, she was always slamming her. I don't like her. I don't want her to come around the house. She's not going to come over here and see my kids. And just, she's bad business and you need to let her go. I'm talking about from the first phone call, there was, I don't know what kind of relationship they had out there on the streets. I don't know if she just started hating her because he got caught up. I don't know what it was, but she did not like her. But so there was a point in time where Lencho was pressing his wife to do shit that she didn't want to do. And, it started stressing her out. And in the meantime, while he's on her and he's riding her, thinking that he's controlling her, and that he thought she was doing everything he wanted her to do. These cops that are sitting back listening to these phone calls, they're smart enough to know, you know what, she's vulnerable right now. This is a good time for us to approach her and put some pressure on her. And that's because of the things that, the phone calls that they had listened to. Lencho gave it to him on a platter, on a silver platter. So they approach his wife and basically they tell her, like they tell any other female that gets caught up, you fucking better cooperate. Otherwise, we're taking your kids and you're going to go down with this guy and you're going to get 1,000 years and you're never going to see the streets again. And what? So, they approach her with that and she bites. She bites. She don't want to lose her kids. And she's tired of this dude shit anyway. He's pushed her to a point to where she's already trying to figure out how to leave this dude. So they give her an out. They approach her. They tell her, look, we want you to work with us. We want to wire you up, and basically we have a list of targets. We need you to, approach all these individuals. Since you're out here taking care of Lencho's business, we need you to facilitate all his business like you've been doing, but at the same time, we need you to wear this wire and take all these individuals down. And she did. And that's exactly what she did. And she was a natural. I listened to mostly all the calls. I listened to a lot of them. And, you guys got to understand, at that time in the Santa Clara County Jail, we didn't have no music. At least at that time. Later on, we'd have all that shit. But, if you were lucky enough to hear a phone call where there was somebody cupcaking with their girl and they were playing an oldie, you marked that phone call as one of your favorites because you had a little bit of music. You got an oldie. Damn, it was good to hear some oldies, right? So every one of these calls that documented, Debbie's her cooperation, they all almost played out exactly the same. They started out with, her in her car. She turned the recording on, then she turned on her radio and she'd be bumping some oldies. The Dells, she'd be playing just, all the groups that I listened to. All her calls that documented her cooperation, they almost all played out the same way. They started out with her in her car, and she turned on the recording. You could hear her fumbling around with the recording. She turned it on, and then she throw on some oldies. And she used to listen to all of the good oldies, all the oldies that I used to listen to, all the underground groups. So, when you heard these calls, like I said, you would mark them as your favorites. But what she would do is, so she would go from point A to straight to point B. She'd drive over to, somebody on the list, whoever they had her targeting, and she'd meet up with them. And, like I said, she was a natural. She would be talking to them. She'd have conversation with them, and she would purposely fumble words. Like she let a word slip out that was supposed to be, a word she would substitute with a code word, and then she'd act like she made an honest mistake. Oh, I mean, such and such. Instead of, you're going to go pick up the dope. I mean, the candy, something like that, just for the sake of getting it on the recording. And the people that she was setting up, none of them, that didn't click. None of them clicked. None of them got suspicious about anything she was doing. So she set everybody up. And, you listen to the phone calls in sequence. Like I said, Lencho, he acted like he was on his game. And then at some point, when she had set up pretty much everybody that they wanted her to target, then it was time for them to get her out of Dodge, to move her out of state somewhere. That's what they did. So you listen to the calls, and then Lencho's on the phone and he's calling this girl. She's not answering the phone. So he calls his sister. He calls Stephanie, and he's like, hey, I know you don't like my girl. I know you and, Debbie don't get along, but I need you to call her for me. She's not answering her phone, and I need you to go over there. And she's got some money that I'm trying to get over here, and I'm trying to do this and that. And his sister, Stephanie, she's like, dude, look, you just need to fight your case, focus on trying to get back out here, and don't worry about her. She's gone. And he doesn't hear it. He keeps on talking. Look, just call her up and just tell her that I need her to drop out this fucking money. We go to store next, in the next couple of days. If I don't get that money, I'm not gonna get my honey buns, right? So then Stephanie tells him, she's like, look, dude, you're not hearing me. She's gone. Nobody can get a hold of her. Nobody knows where she's at. She took off. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Dude, they went to Debbie's house last night at 3 a.m. with moving trucks. The feds. They packed up every fucking thing she had in her house, and they took her across state lines somewhere. Who knows where she's at? She might be in Kentucky somewhere. She's gone. There's nothing in the house. Everything is gone. Worry about yourself. Stop worrying about her. And, you can, it's almost like you can picture the wheels turning in his head. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, are you serious? She's like, she got my bike and she's got my clothes, and like, I don't even have a pair of socks. You got to feel sorry for the dude, but just the way that he says it and the way that it plays out in the phone calls, it's like I said, it's comical, man. Anyways, and I go on and on and on and on, but I got to bring this one to a close. You know, I want to try to get that fee story out to you guys tonight as well. I got to do the editing on these videos. Like I told you guys, Sandman's still on the team, but if you guys notice, there's some changes in the video editing. It's because I finally learned how to do it myself. And Sandman, again, is still on the team. He's still going to be doing, you know, some of the editing, but there's certain things that I'm going to take more of a lead role when it comes to editing and incorporating pictures, because you can't really expect somebody to have your vision. If you tell a story a certain way and you give somebody 100 pictures, how can you really expect that individual to put those pictures in the right spots if they don't have your vision? They haven't been where you've been. So, you know, I think I was expecting a little bit more out of Sandman than he could do, and it was understandable. But, you know, I'll get better at editing. I'll get better at incorporating pictures. You guys should be able to see that a lot of the pictures now are relevant to what's being talked about, you know, in the videos. So, you know, I'm going to continue doing my thing as far as that. I'm up for it. I don't care about putting in a lot of work. You know, I got to come up with these stories. I have to put them in the context of being able to tell them to you guys. I got to stand in front of this screen, tell the stories, then edit them, then incorporate the pictures, then make sure that, you know, I get the videos out to you guys. And it's all good. Like I said, I'm up for it. That's what I do. So I'm going to end this one right here, though, because I want to get that fee video out, the second part of it. I want to try to get that out tonight. I got to edit both of these videos, and it is time consuming because I haven't really learned the tricks of the trade yet. Be able to cut corners and, you know, learn some tricks that will help me get it done a lot faster. I'll get there, but it's going to take some time. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed episode 94. I'm also going to put something out tonight regarding the scholarship that we will be giving away. We're probably going to announce the winner of that scholarship on the 24th. This is a major thing for a lot of you. You know, I've talked to a lot of you about addiction, alcoholism, and some of the ill effects that, you know, it's caused throughout your lives. Some of you guys have personal experiences that you told me about yourselves. And some of you were passionate about wanting to help other people. Well, here's your chance. Here's your chance at, you know, being able to become a certified drug and alcohol counselor in the state of California. And, you know, this is a $7,000 scholarship that we're giving away. I want to make sure that this goes to the right person. I want to make sure that this goes to somebody that's passionate about not only helping people, but about also pursuing a career in that field. Not just somebody that just wants to put another notch, you know, in their belt of achievements. I got this scholarship, you know, just because I was able to get it, and then it sits and collects dust somewhere. So, you know, I'm going to release something on that later on tonight. And I'm going to try to get that second part of the fee video out. So hopefully I'll be able to knock those down. Anyways, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys stay safe out there. Keep pushing that positivity. Drop your comments. Let me know what you think about the things that I talked about in this episode right here. And let me know what you guys think about, you know, me getting straight into the video, or you guys want me to go back to the old way and ramble on for about 10 minutes before I get into the video. You guys are too much. Anyways, you guys be safe. This your boy B, and I'm out.